2. Microbes, water, sulfur, and of course my personal favorite, bacon bombs. How do these all tie together? How do they interact? What are the stresses they cause on fuel and diesel fuel tanks? And most importantly, what can we do about it? I'm Grant Cavalier, back here with Peak's Diesel Fuel Additive Business Manager, Steve DeVard. This is a live event, guys. We encourage your questions, your comments. You can enter those on the right side of your screen. We'll get to as many as we can at the end of it. For your convenience, we have our specs and SDS sheets right below. Feel free to reference those as well. Before we dig into all that, Steve,
Yeah,
tell me,
I will.
why is water management and tank maintenance such a hot topic?
It's such a hot topic in the industry, Grant, and I've been to a lot of industry events and associations throughout the past couple of years, and ASTM meetings are talking about this as well, is that management of the tank and water management and microbes is becoming one of the growing problems in the industry, and you know, fleet managers and industry people alike are trying to figure out or trying to look at the problem to understand what solutions can be made to take care of this problem. And it all stems from a decision that was made back around 2006, 2007 when the Clean Air Act was implemented, where when the regulations, when the government asked for the movement of low sulfur diesel to ultra low sulfur diesel. And Grant, you know we love acronyms and the thing. So whenever
Yes, sir.
somebody sees ULSD, that's ultra low sulfur diesel, which is what most of the diesel that you buy today is, you know, the 60 billion gallons that are sold in the US is ultra low sulfur diesel. But when you made that move from low sulfur diesel, which was around 500 parts per million of sulfur, to 15 parts per million sulfur, it had the great benefit of reducing harmful emissions through the tailpipe of the commercial vehicles that operate with diesel. But there were some other consequences that happened when they went from low sulfur diesel to ultra low sulfur diesel. One of the things that happened, and we talked about this in the last Fluid Thinking event, was the lubricity of the fuel.
Yes.
The slickiness. I think I made up that word, didn't I, Grant, the last time?
I like
the
it.
Diesel fuel is, you know, can be slicky, and sulfur played a role in the slickiness of the fuel. And if you had an engine that was designed earlier, it was struggling with the fact that that fuel was drier now because there's less sulfur in it. So fuel pump wear is becoming an issue, or has become an issue with older engines that are operating and working with ultra low sulfur diesel. But the other issues that we are also seeing, or consequences from moving from low sulfur to ultra low sulfur, is the fact that sulfur played a role as a immune system for the fuel. Sulfur can kill microbes, or at least control the activity of microbes. And so there was less microbes, or there was less microbes in the system because of the fact that there was more sulfur to kind of attack them, so to speak. That was the immune system, is the terminology that we've used in the industry. And then the third, and probably the one that's going to, you know, is the basis of today's conversation, along with the microbe piece, is the fact of water. Now, when we went from low sulfur diesel to ultra low sulfur diesel, sulfur played a role in holding that water into solution in the fuel, along with the fact that there's less aromatics now in the fuel as well. So the water that used to be suspended in the low sulfur diesel dropped out of solution, and we're seeing more and more water, because water is heavier than fuel.
Yes, it is.
As we know, Grant,
yes,
right?
It is.
That more water is dropping to the bottom of the tank, and all of that has led to all kinds of issues, which we'll talk about today. But the issue that the industry is talking about is corrosion, but accelerated corrosion, which we'll get into a little bit more as we talk about the problem.
Okay, so we have water that's getting in naturally with the diesel fuel.
Correct.
Are there other ways that water's getting into the tanks?
Yeah, there is. And you know, why don't we grab that picture of the tank there, and our sharp camera guy will focus in on this great diagram that we have, which shows this is an underground storage tank, and what you can see is there's airspace in the black right above. I'll get over here and kind of talk through it here. But what you can see is there's airspace there, and this is the fuel. Now, there's a lot of different places where water can enter the tank. It could come through the different fill points that are on an underground storage tank. If there's any seat or leak or cracks around there, that water can seep through there as well. We have had a customer at a fill point have some, where the fill point is, there's a canister of where the nozzle is, where people drop the fuel into the tank. And what happens is that their water will collect in that basin, so to speak, and before they drop the fuel, they'll pull the pin and all that water will drop right down into the tank. That's a physical way of water getting into the tank. But you'll see there will be leaks around that fill point area. There'll be leaks around the vent system as well. If the vent system is not managing the air properly, the air might get into it where there might be water molecules. All of that can be ways of water getting into the tank. And then the last one, which happens quite a bit with underground storage tanks or any kind of storage tanks, if the temperature difference between the outside and the inside is different enough, and you have a headspace of air kind of sitting on the top of the tank, condensation can form along the side of the wall of the tank, which would then, as it drips down, it can drip right into the fuel, and then eventually get right into the bottom of the tank. All of which are different ways that water can get into the system.
So, why is this such a bad thing? Why is water in there such a harmful thing?
Yeah, so water is great for you and me, right?
Yep.
But when water's in fuel, it can cause problems. But it's great for you and me because we live with it. We live on it. Water is important for life. And that's why it's become a bigger issue, is because water is an important piece of how microbes that are operating, that can be living in the fuel or come through the water, can form and start creating great colonies, great cities of bugs that live in the water layer. And there's a photo that our camera guy will bring up to, and this is just a beaker of water and fuel. The fuel's on the top, water's in the bottom, and you can see this dark brown area, and that's colonies of microbes that are having a party, living in the water, thriving in the water, getting bigger in the water, having babies, doing all the kinds of things that happens when you are thriving, and feeding off of the fuel or the biodiesel that might be in the fuel, or even ethanol might be in that fuel through crossover, all feeding away and living and breathing. And when it's an organism, so it's an organism, and it operates just like any organism. It will excrete things, right? It will excrete poo. So those things become deposits that can get into the fuel system and start clogging up filters in the fuel system. That's one reason why microbes in water is bad. But the other reason, which is part of why we're seeing accelerated corrosion, is the fact that that the microbes actually create acetic acid. And that acid plays a big role in corrosion and accelerated corrosion throughout the tank, as well as into the fuel system, and can get it all the way into the truck itself. And that's part of the reason why that those things are really bad. In fact, I can show you some pictures if you want. But before I do that, though, I wanted to show you this pan. Let's see if our crack camera guy can bring it up closer. This is the bottom of a tank on a truck, a fuel pan. And what has happened is that this was there was fuel and water that collected at the bottom of this fuel pan. And what happened is, you can see, maybe if you're going to put that piece of paper right behind, you can see a hole right in the middle, right there. That's caused by acetic acid. There's pitting that happens when the acetic acid kind of sits on the mantle, and it got to such a point that it actually burrowed a hole. You can see as well, there's all kinds of rust areas here, all created by the acetic acid doing accelerated corrosion and pitting as well. This is one of the problems with corrosion. This is one of the problems that the industry is trying to solve, is acetic acid coming and creating pitting and rust, accelerated rust onto metal parts. Additionally, if we can show some of the fantastic slides here of different parts within the tank system itself. The first slide here looks like some type of pump, probably a turbine pump head that sits in a canister. What happens there is the air in the head space in the tank actually has the acetic acid in it as well, and that's actually corrosion that wouldn't have happened normally. But it's happened because there's so much microbes and acetic acid in the fuel tank itself. You get coral-like corrosion happening on this turbine head pipe. Turbine pump head. that we're showing here. And here's another example of another internal submersible pump that you can find in the tank. Once again, you can see the rust, all that created by accelerated corrosion from the acetic acid. And there's a deeper dive into that same pump part as well. Sean, if you move to the next slide, you can see the deposits can clog up filters. The upper left-hand corner shows a filter right by the meter itself where you're seeing all kinds of rusty-like material. That's all deposits that are forming from the fact that there's an unhealthy fuel system, an unhealthy fuel tank that fleet's operating. And then next slide there, the rust can make it all the way into all kinds of different parts, even within the engine itself. The acceleration and corrosion, all created by the acetic acids. So we talked about the fact that this is, the impact of this as well. The other thing that happens too, that you might notice from the air is, I know you're a healthy guy and you don't probably eat any potato chips, but I'm a big salt and vinegar fan.
Okay.
I love the smell of vinegar. It's very distinct.
Very distinct.
If you smell this at your tank, that means you have a problem. Most likely there's a problem. The odor is another indicator of beyond, it overtakes the normal fuel odor. A vinegar-like smell is an indication that there's something going on in the tank.
Okay, so I can see the effects of microbes, water. I could smell the effects.
Yep.
If I look in a tank, how would I know that there's water in it if it's going to settle to the bottom?
So nearly all tanks will have some level of water.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's just a natural part of the system. The problem is if there's too much water or if there are microbes in there, they thrive on that. One of the ways that when we talk to fleet customers about managing their tank system, one of the things that is important for that fleet to do, or what our distributor sales teams could recommend to our distributors to do, is actually to do what they call a bacon bomb. So Sean, if you can show me that great picture that you got. Here's a gentleman that's actually, obviously he's kitted out very properly with all the safety gear, has actually dropped what looks like a cylinder type metal device into the bottom of the tank. He pulls that up, grabbing a sample of fuel at the bottom of that tank, and then you put that into a sample container and then ship it to a lab that then will evaluate whether there's water or microbes. In fact, we at Peak, a part of our overall program is that we have the ability to take samples of fuel and we can tell how much water is in the fuel, how much gross water is at the bottom of the tank, and the level or the types of different organisms that might be operating in the tank as well. And so it's always the recommendation is to make sure that your fleets are doing that on a regular basis. If they have a problem or they notice all the things that we've talked about today, definitely a bacon bomb is the first step to understanding what you're dealing with, because you can't open up the tank and look in and see that there's water down there. That's why the bacon bomb is important.
Perfect.
A lot of the fleets also have these systems. One of them is called Vita Root that actually will alarm the fleet manager on a whole bunch of different things, but there will be a water alarm as well if the water level is so high. The problem is, and as I said earlier, water is inevitably going to be on the tank. You're trying to minimize the amount of water. If it doesn't hit the alarm, then you might still have a lot of water in there anyways that could breed and allow colonies of bugs to thrive in that tank itself. So once you got those kind of situations going on, and once you understand a little bit about what's happening in the fuel tank, if it's a gross problem, then the fleet manager should be contacting a contractor to do basically a flush, or what they call in the industry a polishing, where they basically take a big hose into the tank, pull out all the liquid that's in the tank, separate the water and deposits, filtering the deposits that might have formed in the tank, and then putting the fuel back in, kind of polishing or cleaning the fuel. And then they can get into more expensive activities where they actually go into the tank and clean it all out. All that you do when you have a gross water problem. Along with that kind of very physical and costly activity, it's always important for the fleets to make sure that they're watching and taking a look at the integrity of the tank itself.
Sure.
One of the problems we had with a fleet down in I think it was Virginia or Tennessee, where they had they were having a water problem. They hired a guy to polish the tank, and then they tested it again within a week or two. They had a rainstorm, and the tank was, had gotten a lot of water in it again. And they identified one of the coverings for near the fill points was not sealing properly and letting a lot of water in. So, as part of the process to evaluate what's happening at a tank, it's very important that they look as well at all the physical pieces around the tank, from the vent pipe to the fill points, to make sure that that there's no leaks on there as well. So once you got all that, and you've taken care of the problem, or you have a problem that is maybe not so bad, but you've identified that there's some organisms in there, there's a couple of quicker solutions that we offer in our that we'll be offering in our line that I want to kind of make sure we talk about. The first one is we're going to be launching this fall our Biocide, our blue Microbe Gone, which is one of the leading biocides available on the market, and it's a great product that will kill about, I think, sorry for the 1 gallon treats about 10,000 gallons, so a 32-ounce container will kill about 2,500, will treat 2,500 gallons of fuel, and it's designed to kill all the microbes within 6 hours. Now, one of the things, folks, that is very important when you're talking to, when you see competitive products, and in fact, if you're carrying a competitive product, if you ever have a competitor say that their product is a microbiocide and it kills algae, it kills bacteria, fungi, but they say it kills algae, there's no such thing as algae, because algae needs to operate with sunlight. So if you have competitive products that say it kills algae, they may not actually be the right competitive product to buy into, because if they're saying that, they really don't understand that the problem is actually more of these type of things that don't need sunlight. So we'll be offering our Microbe Gone starting this fall, and it's one of those products that from a maintenance perspective, customers should use it twice a year. If they have a problem, obviously they should use it as a shock treatment.
Okay.
When they do use it, it will kill everything that's in there, all the microbes in there. Obviously that will fall into the fuel system, and it will get picked up in the fuel system and will fill up the filters a little bit. So they'll have to change out the filters, but they should be assured that health of the fuel system is improved by the fact that it's killed a lot of microbes. So that's your shock treatment if you have a problem, or in a maintenance program, you need to shock probably twice a year. Now, on a continuous basis, to date, Old World, we've offered Peak All-Season Diesel Boost, which has dispersants in it that do a really good job in taking the water molecules that are at the bottom of the tank and encapsulating them and then moving them out of the fuel system and helping to manage what I would say is, not a gross water problem, but it's something that has done a good job in dispersing that water. But what's more important, this fall we'll be launching our first, product that's specifically geared to managing tanks, called ClearGuard, and it does a much better job, an even better job, I should say, of moving excess water out of the fuel system and getting it either combusted or getting it filtered out through the truck, through the water filters that are on the truck, getting that water out of the tank itself, all of which, when you reduce the amount of water in the tank, you reduce the conditions that microbes can operate in. And that these are going to be the products going forward that we're hoping that our distributors will add on to their offer.
Perfect. So what keywords should we tune in on, or what questions should we be asking to uncover opportunities for Peak diesel fuel additives?
As I've talked about in the past, when we did our last Fuel Thinking Live event, I think the best way is to try to develop a conversation with the fleet manager, not just go right in and start talking about products, but start kind of unpacking if there's a problem.
Okay.
A couple questions I always like to talk about is, how's the health of their fuel system? Have they had water issues in the past? How often are they testing? All of that, if they're not testing that much, hopefully that leads into a conversation about, developing a program. Or if they are testing, understanding who they're using or what products they're using as a testing program. Do they shock twice a year. And that's all I'm hoping is those kind of open-ended questions can then lead into discussions about the product offer that Peak is providing through our distributors.
Would we key in at all on our Veeder alarms or anything like that, or?
Well, it asks if it's a great question. If they ask if they're all of a sudden, we had a fleet that was having lots of alarms going off from their Veeder root system that there was a water issue, that's also a great question, as an indication that there's a problem with the health of their fuel system.
Great. Okay. So, great information.
Yeah.
We've discussed what leads to tank issues for maintenance and water management, what we can do about it. Do we have some time to take some questions? Perfect. Let's see. Bob from Wisconsin. What sizes are available?
So for the Microbes, since it treats a lot of gallons, we're offering that in a 16 and a 32 ounce container. All Season Diesel Boost is available in the 32 ounce, 2.5 gallon, 55 gallon, and a tote.
Excellent.
And then ClearGuard will be available in a 32 ounce container, 2.5 gallon, a 55 gallon drum, and a tote as well.
Perfect.
Yep.
John, thanks for tuning in. When will the new products be available?
Yeah, so the new products are scheduled to be launched this fall. We start rolling that into August and September. Microbes is an EPA registered product, and so we're going through the registration process it is, but we're intending for the full product line to be available this fall.
Okay, great. I got one more from Martin. Is this product a petroleum distillant?
So all the products, all diesel fuel additives are distillates and are a function of petroleum anyways. So there's a componentry that is in there. There's the solvents, obviously the additive components. All of them have some level of petroleum distillates in it.
Okay, great. Guys, appreciate you tuning in. If you want to watch this video again or share it, or the video for our all-season diesel boost, these are recorded for your convenience. Contact your Peak commercial and industrial sales rep. They'll be able to answer any questions you have or forward you the links from this video or videos from the past. Steve, thanks for your time and expertise.
Thanks a lot, Grant.
That was really good stuff there. To our men behind the cameras, Sean, Russ, thank you very much. On behalf of everybody from Peaks Commercial and Industrial, thanks for tuning in. July 20th, our next event. You're not going to want to miss it. See you then.